Hello everyone, I'm Autobot Sonic the Telltale Gamer, bringing you latest on everything Telltale Games, Transformers, and more. So, after a very long time, we are I must apologize for the delay in these reviews. We are back with Transformers Robots in Disguise Combiner Force Episode 2, King of the Hill Part 2. Now, this is the second part of the Season 3 premiere of Transformers Robots in Disguise Combiner Force, and I gotta say, Part 2 definitely finishes off the premiere strong after Part 1 had a sort of lackluster beginning. There's definitely a lot of good moments, and especially a really interesting and cliffhanger ending, which I'm really looking forward to going over. So we're gonna go ahead and right now and see what this episode did right and what it did wrong. So the episode starts off right when the last episode, King of the Hill Part 1, ended with Heatseeker's missiles attacking the Autobots. Just as they're about to reach Grimlock and the rest of the Autobots, Drift recognizes the type of missiles and apparently is able to shut them down with some sort of audio frequency. I've never seen this happen before in Transformers, but hey, we'll go with it. It's better than nothing. So anyway, this leads eventually into the group going after Heatseeker but then because they realize that Heatseeker is planning to blow up this nuclear power site, and this leads into one of the more funnier moments in the episode, in which if you remember from the last episode, there was this her old hermit that Strongarm and Sideswipe ran into in the last episode. So Strongarm and Sideswipe need to go try and get him out of there so that he doesn't get hurt. And at least in one of probably the funniest moments of the episode, in which in order to convince him to leave, and because it's dangerous, Sideswipe transforms and tries to convince him that aliens are real, so you think he'll be scared that he'll leave, but it's really funny because instead the hermit thinks that the government's drugging him so that he's imagining the aliens, so instead he just runs away because he doesn't want to get drugged by the water anymore, and I thought that was a really funny scene. Also, during this, we finally get our conclusion to Russell's story. And I remember in the last episode, the whole thing about Russell's story is that it's kind of like he's kind of going in parallel with the Autobot story, in that he thinks he's so good because he's on better football, and then the new kid comes and he totally wrecks him. So basically, Russell's just having sort of a crisis in that he doesn't believe he can do it. He gets a little pep talk from Danny, which I think is really nice, and it's nice to see that. So for once, we actually get a human story in a Transformers show that isn't really cringy like Miko was in Transformers Prime, and I'm really happy to see that Hasbro got this to work so perfectly. So eventually, we get a nice little bonding moment between Denny, Hank, and Russell, and Russell gets invigorated. He manages to get back in, play smarter, and beat the other team, which I think is really cool. I hope we see more of this. Even if I don't want to take up the entire episode, but next I think maybe distribute at least 5 minutes every 2 or 3 episodes to Russell. I think that could work. It definitely was one of the better parts of this episode, so I can't see what they do next with Russell. So back to the Autobot story. Eventually, one thing leads to another, and Heatseeker ends up absolutely wrecking the Autobots. Eventually, Bumblebee gets knocked into a whole batch of oil next to a bunch of oil canisters, and a bunch of Heatseekers are coming straight for him, and he's gonna blow up. However, before he can do this, an unknown blue Minicon, who doesn't seem to have a Decepticon or an Autobot logo, similar to the unaligned Minicons back in the Starscream episodes, he has been watching Bumblebee and everyone since the first episode, actually, and he all of a sudden jumps in and combines with Bumblebee and gives him if you remember when Dark of the Moon was coming out, the video game for Dark of the Moon had there was these things called Stealth Force, in which the Transformers they could be in their vehicle modes but still shoot guns and stuff at them. They kind of looked supercharged almost. It's kind of like that, in which basically Bumblebee gets a turbo engine and he can now fly, so he flies out of there. Everyone freaks out they see him flying around and stuff. It's pretty cool. I'm wondering, I understand this is probably one of the toy features that they was advertising now, that you can put your Minicons on Autobots now and you can transform them, combine them, this whole thing, Combiner Force. But I hope we see more of this in the future, similar to how the unaligned Minicons gave power surges to the Autobots in the Starscream episodes. So eventually, all the Autobots end up cornering Heatseeker, and just as they all dogpile on him, and this actually causes a huge chain reaction, small explosion, in which they actually end up accidentally turning into Ultra Beast for the first time. Now, I gotta say, this is interesting that they ended up doing it accidentally rather than, because the trailers made it seem that they planned it to turn Ultra Beast, but the fact that they did it accidentally, I think, is pretty cool, and they're gonna learn to more control it as the season goes on, but I think is really cool. So anyway, the Autobots now combined as Ultra Bee are knocked out because they have no idea what happened. They just combined for the first time. Heatseeker uses this opportunity to get away, and not before taking a Cybertron relic detector he just happens to find in a crater in the ground. Now this is actually really interesting because we see him report to his boss, who we know is Motormaster, and so it's really nice to see Motormaster is finally in the Robots in Disguise. And for his, I'm really happy to say, Motormaster is voiced by Travis Willingham, who, if you notice, he was the voice of Roy Mustang in Fullmetal Alchemist, Knuckles, and Sonic the Hedgehog, and most recently Harvey Dent in Batman the Telltale series. So now, to be honest, Travis Willingham is probably one of the best possible voices for Motormaster. I can definitely see him fitting his personality. He really is sort of like a Knuckles-like character, like very rough around the edges, like strong like that, and sort of dumb. I was also thinking that Travis Willingham might have voiced Overload, but instead we got Dave Fennoy voicing him. But I think, I think Travis Willingham was a great choice to voice Motormaster as the main villain for Season 3, and I can't wait to see what Hasbro's in store for his character this season. So after that, Heatseeker gets away and reports back to Motormaster, Ultra Bee decombines. However, the Autobots have no idea what just happened, so they still believe that, they just believe that Heatseeker beat them up or something like that. So eventually they decide to head back to not Cybertron, the scrapyard, but not before Bumblebee realizes that his Decepticon hunter is missing. And then we get a really, really cool stinger in which we have the Blue Minicon walking away with Bumblebee's Decepticon hunter, and he opens this purple portal. I remember this is a shot very familiar from the Season 3 launch trailer, in which we hear none other than Soundwave in the portal. And this is great because I thought Soundwave didn't get enough screen time back in season. If you remember, Soundwave last appeared in episode 10 of Season 2, Portals, when he broke out of the Shadow Zone, only to be plunged back in at the end of the episode. So, we knew that Soundwave was going to be coming back because he got a toy announced prior to Season 3. So, I bet, to me, and what I'm wondering is, even though this Minicon has not yet been named, I'm wondering, could this Minicon be Frenzy or Rumble? I guess, or Frenzy could be Blue. If there's a whole Frenzy Blue, Rumble Red, or Rumble Blue, Frenzy Red thing. I honestly think like go buy a G1 cartoon that Rumble's blue, Frenzy's red. So is this possibly Rumble? I mean, we haven't seen Rumble unless you count the War for Cybertron games. We haven't seen Rumble or Frenzy in Transformers Prime or Robots in Disguise. And so I was always wondering, we had Laserbeak, but we've never seen Sawblade, who's basically yellow Laserbeak, Rumble, Frenzy, or Ravage, who is his tiger cassette tape. So I'm wondering, could this be Rumble? It very much seems like it. So I'm really looking forward to see what Hasbro's plan for this Minicon, who may or may not be Rumble. Now, as for the cons, this episode is pretty light on it. The only really thing I could think of is how easily Heatseeker wrecks Bumblebee and everyone. Because, I mean, you've seen them take on people like Steeljaw, who is a very calculating, and it's basically like a lesser Starscream, and they even took on Starscream and Megatronus Prime, yet they did that with, almost ease, or, not as much. They were struggling more with Heatseeker than they ever did with Starscream and Steeljaw and Megatronus, which is I understand they had to do this because obviously then it would be a challenge, but it just seems out of character for them, and I hope that eventually they don't keep doing this, because then it sort of underwhelms the Autobots, and I hope that Hasbro fixes that. But other than that, this was a pretty great episode. And so that was my review of Transformers Robots in Disguise Combiner Force Episode 2, King of the Hill Part 2. If I had to rate this episode, I would probably give it an 8 out of 10. It was definitely the better half of the premiere episode. The whole Combiner thing, the Stealth Force thing with Bumblebee and possibly Rumble was great. We got for our first appearance of Ultra Bee, Soundwave, and Motormaster appearing. But the lack of strength against Heatseekers kind of lowered it down, but I can't wait to see what happens next. So that's going to be it for this episode. I'll be back soon with episode 3, Defrosted. If you like this review, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys later.